Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I'm really excited to welcome our next podcast guest to the show, and it's Dr. John Demartini. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me back today.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you back. I was just looking at our history, and we recorded a podcast last year in December on the science of gratitude. So I'm super excited to have you back. I remember it was a very spiritual and really insightful podcast interview that we had back then. And I know that you've been working on a lot of different books. And so super excited to dive into these things. However, the first three questions that I always ask my podcast guests are: number one, what time is it? Number two, where are you located? And number three, what have you been up to today?
What time is it? It is 3:06 p.m. in the afternoon. I happen to be in Houston, Texas. I'm off my ship right now, so I'm in Houston,
Nice.
Texas at the moment.
Okay.
I'm visiting my daughters here and son, and also we're filming for another documentary movie. And what am I up to today? Just specifically today, I've been editing on another textbook that I'm doing, and I also had a meeting with a lovely former girlfriend of mine that I hadn't seen in a while. It just happened to be, she just bought her a new Rolls Royce, so she was coming by and wanted to drive me around and show it off.
Oh, nice.
And then I also just been editing. So I've been working on editing this morning and doing podcast.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, I remember the last time we talked, you told us about being on the ship. How many months out of the year do you usually spend on the ship?
Well, so I'm off the ship now because I'm here seeing my kiddos.
I see.
But it depends. I mean, sometimes I'm scheduled speaking and I'm on the other side of the earth, but my residence is the ship. So that's my residence. That's where I live.
Okay. And which port is it then at the moment?
Right now, it's over in the edge of Greece, and it just came out of Italy going into Greece. So we're on the coast of Greece in a small little port there.
Oh, amazing. That sounds really nice. I actually visited Greece myself for the first time this year. It was super lovely. So beautiful. I was very excited.
Yeah, I get back on in a couple weeks because I'll be here for filming. And then I'll be back on in Turkey, and then Cyprus, and then Israel, and then Egypt, and then the Suez Canal, and the Emirates, and then Saudi Arabia. We just keep moving around. Then off into India, I think Sri Lanka, and then the Maldives, Seychelles, that area.
Nice. Sounds lovely. John, tell us a little bit more about where you get your inspiration from writing all of these wonderful books.
Well, I had a dream when I was 17 years old, 50 years ago, to travel the world, teach, and become intelligent and learn to read and write. And so that's been my dream, and that's what I've been doing for all these years. I've been learning. At first I had to learn how to read, then I ended up learning how to read, and then I wanted to learn how to write, and then I started to write books. And jokingly, the first book I ever wrote never sold anything. I never sold any, but I just kept writing, and I've written probably 300 books now. So I'm constantly writing books.
Yeah.
A lot of them are textbooks.
And this year you said you've been writing on 3 books and 2 are being published. Is that correct?
One is out now as of yesterday.
Amazing.
One's coming out in about a month or so. I just finished that, sent it off. It's called The Resilient Mind. Another one called The Productivity Factor will be coming out probably at the first of the year. And then I'm finishing up a big textbook. It's a 1,100-page textbook on physics and optics. That's I'm just finishing up. I'm doing the final edit on now. And so I'm also working on a book on neurology in the brain. So that'll come up the second this other one's finished, which will be in about 7 days. I'm off to the brain one. So I'm constantly researching, writing, and doing that.
Yeah,
Anything that might be of assistance to the mastery of life, I'm interested in researching and writing about.
I see. And the book that you published yesterday, or that came out yesterday, which one is that?
That's the 7 Secret Treasures.
The 7 Secret Treasures.
Yeah,
Okay,
that just came out. It just hit yesterday.
amazing. And how did that go? Do you already
Uh,
have some insight?
I haven't got the stats on it, but from what I can tell, it's doing pretty good because people are sending me copies of them getting a book. They're sending pictures of it. I got your book. I got your book. I got. So I don't know. I don't.
Amazing.
I teach, research, and write, and I have people that do everything else. So I just focus on what I do best and don't get distracted too often by anything else.
Yeah, that's amazing. And is it a stressful life? I mean, you said you have a lot of people that do all the other things for you, but between kind of traveling and speaking and documentaries and writing and reviewing books, how do you manage all of that?
Um, I teach, and I have a hierarchy of things that I teach. Keynote speeches, um, seminars, seminars, webinars. Workshops, webinars, podcasts. I have a series of every possible way I can be teaching, even one-on-one consulting. And so they're prioritized, and my team takes care of that. My publicity team or other promoter teams or whatever, they do that. And I just do what I do is research, write, and teach. So I don't get stressed by that. I just got asked to be a trustee of a big company, a steel company in America, just about 30 minutes ago. That's a bigger responsibility, but they don't know who else to do it. So they said, we want you to do it. We'll pay you whatever it is. So they're going to pay me really well just to be the trustee for it.
Amazing.
So I don't normally do those things, but I know the individual, I know the company, I know the people. So I'll do something on the side. But most of the time I just teach, research, and write. Everything is delegated. So I don't cook. I don't do it domestic things. There's somebody there to do everything else. So I don't have to do that.
How long has it been like that in your life?
I started delegating and doing things by delegation at age 27.
Okay.
I'm 68 now, so that's 40 years. As a result of that, I learned not to do anything other than the highest priority things. I don't do low priority things. So I've been doing that for many years.
Amazing. And have you always had the means to do that and to hire people, or do you feel like you've just been thinking about that in a different way than maybe other people do?
No, I learned many years ago that if you surround yourself with people who are experts in their field, and you go out and do what you're an expert in, and you do it in a way that's serving greater numbers of people, and you do it in a sustainable way where fair exchange occurs, you're remunerated for it more than the cost of all the delegations. So I was blessed to just able to produce by doing something I love doing, writing books and doing presentations and everything else. So I ended up manifesting the income to be able to pay for everything else, and they helped me make income. So I try to teach people how to do that so they can have a life that they can do what they love and get paid for it. I'm a firm believer that's totally possible.
I'm curious, I don't know if that's too much of a personal question, but what do your kids do?
My oldest daughter does what I do. And
Okay.
she's following in the footsteps and taking over and teaching and
Nice.
doing all the things that I do, exactly the same thing. My middle daughter is a fashion designer. If you look, you can see the Demartini fashion.
Oh,
So
it looks really beautiful. I already saw that you wore a very nice suit. It looks very nice.
Yeah. So she takes care of all my clothes. Everything is. So we take that. The family owns that, and then my son is a YouTube personality, so he's basically on the YouTube every day. Sometimes as many hours as I'm teaching, he's on the YouTube doing his YouTube thing, and having people following him. So he's built a business around that.
Amazing. And so he's teaching as well, because that's what you usually do on YouTube, right?
Yeah, well, he's entertaining and teaching.
Entertaining. Uh-huh.
He's a philosophy background plus entertainment, plus he's just a sense of humor. He's a wild character.
Right.
And so that's what they do. And yeah, my daughter will be she does programs with me, sometimes the same. We're doing them together. She
Uh-huh.
teaches alongside with me. So it's very
Uh-huh.
inspiring. And she does consulting and speaking also. In fact, one of the movies we're doing that we're filming, she's going to be in that one too.
Okay. Incredible. Wow. What a cool family. So let's jump into talking about the books and all of the, I mean, not all of the books, because we would probably be sitting here for a few hours if we talked about all of your 300 books that you published over the last multiple decades. The book that came out yesterday, tell us again the title of that.
The Seven Secret Treasures.
The Seven Secret Treasures. What is the book about?
Okay. Many years ago, when I was old, with David Carradine. And in there, he talked about his Shaolin master, that was the gentleman who he trained under in his martial arts. And I decided when I watched that show, when I was 18 years old, I wanted to be a master. It sounded cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat on and asked, what is a master? A master is somebody who is adept, very highly skilled in a particular field of endeavor. And so I said, I want to be a master of life. So I said, so how do I master life? So then I broke life into 7 areas: our spiritual quest, our intellectual pursuit, our business pursuit, our wealth pursuit, our relationship pursuit, our social impact pursuit, and our physical health and well-being. And so I then said, okay, I want to master each of those areas. So I'm going to master how to use the mind to its fullest capacity, and wake up genius, do some innovative, creative things that contribute to the world, etc. And so I mapped out what I wanted to do. I also wanted to use my mental capacities for reading and writing and absorbing information. I wanted to find out what was possible.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I wanted to learn speed reading and photo reading, and just to see what was possible for a human mind. Then I wanted to have a business that was international, that had literally impact on people in every country around the world. And I've now gotten to speak in 181 countries. So I'm getting that goal. It's happening. And I also want to be financially independent. And so I'm now 50 times that. And so the goal that I originally set, it's now 50 times that amount. And then I wanted to also have, a global family. And I have that. I've said I live on a ship called the World that goes around the world, and my family is all over the place. We rendezvous, and my passed away, but my girlfriend's in Turkey right now, so I'm seeing her. She's going to be on the ship in just a few days. Then I also wanted to have social influence. I wanted anybody that had any global influence, whether it be CEOs of companies, or whether it be great philosophers or Nobel Prize winners or movie actors or producers or sports personalities, anybody that has a global influence, I wanted to associate with, have as clients and touch. And there's now been over 4,000 of those that I've gotten to interact with. And then I had a goal to be vital and be energized, and I feel like I'm 68 and I'm still just beginning. And then I wanted to be able to do some sort of contribution spiritually, to be able to make, not a religion, there's plenty of religions, but just how to help people that are living inspired lives. We have now, very many people. There's millions of people that are doing that now. So that, and then Einstein said that the greatest teacher is exemplification. So I want to exemplify that. So the book is it's not a big giant compendium. It's not even 200 pages, but it's a magnificent book summarizing in simple format the highest priority actions that allow people to empower the 7 areas of life. I noticed that when I was asking women what they were looking for in men, one of my programs, somebody who's fit and well, a trim body and, attractive and broad shoulders and that kind of thing, and has a deep voice and, these kind of things. But they also wanted somebody that was intelligent. They wanted somebody that was ambitious. They wanted somebody that had resources, so they didn't have to take care of a little boy. They wanted somebody that was at least equally as economically as they were, somebody that really wanted to be with them and love them, somebody that was socially savvy and could interact with them and be a trophy, that wherever she would take him, he would be able to fit in. Somebody that was, inspired. So all of the 7 areas of life is what people are looking for. So the book is about how to help people empower those areas, primarily through the structure of human values, because whatever is highest on an individual value of an individual, that's what they're spontaneously going to inspire and excel in. So it's based on values. It's based on how to organize your genius. And so I tell people how they can build wealth, how they can build their business, how they can build their brain, how they can build their relationship, their social influence, their physical health and well-being, and their inspiration in life. So it's a practical, very inspiring, not too overly overwhelming book. I try to keep it simple and to the point. And it's the things that I've done that's helped me accomplish what I'm doing. I'm now just passing the torch to people.
Yeah, that's great. And so it's beautiful because the 7 secret treasures then are basically just how we live our lives in a way, right? About all of these different areas that are important to us and that are important to the people around us, and how to achieve mastery in these areas, right?
Exactly. Well, the reason I say it's a treasure in there, let me give you an example. Nobody goes to work for the sake of a company, even if they own it. They go to work to fulfill what they value most. So if you have a mother who's got a job and her highest values are children, she goes to work to make sure she's giving advantages to her children. And if her children are sick, she'll say, I can't make it to work today. But if somebody has a high value on business, not children, but on business, they'll go to work to advance their business, scale their business. So everybody is going and doing work, for instance, according to what they value. If they can see how their job description is helping them fulfill their value, they are engaged. They're spontaneously inspired to do the actions, and they'll excel, and they'll be productive, and they'll do a high quality job. So what I do is I show people how to hire people according to values, how to inspire people and teams according to values, how to lead in terms of values, how to manage according to values, how to sell and negotiate according to values, how to communicate in people's values, to maximize the least resistant and the least autocratic format of running a business so it flows. And how to help people be fulfilled in their jobs. So if you're an employee or somebody that owns a company, what's in that chapter will be worth it. It'll be valuable. So it's practical, and it's time tested. I've been doing this for 45 years, this particular information. I've been literally practicing 45 years with companies and people. So I'm certain it works. And the same thing in waking up genius. Children love learning. They just want to learn what they love that's important to them. If they can't see how the classes they're taking helps them fulfill what they really want to learn, they're not engaged. So I show tools on how to take children who are not engaged in learning because they're taking classes they can't see how it's going to serve them, and how to get them engaged so they're not labeled ADHD, defiant disorders, put on medications, and all this other crazy stuff. How to maximize the learning capacities in youth. And since we're all youth to somebody, you may be having to learn at work. So the same principles will apply to work. And then in finances, people will live their life according to their values. And if they don't have a value on wealth building, it's not likely to occur. You're going to spend money according to your values. And so I show people how to shift some of the value structures so they can increase the probability of sustaining transactions that produce more, and then have more to save and invest so they can have money working for them instead of having them work for money all the time. because otherwise they're slaves to money instead of masters to it. So I show people how to master their mind capacity to learn, master their business for productivity, master their mental capacities and their mental mindset for mastery of wealth building, so they can. There's no reason why you do it. I mean, I have young kids starting at 9 doing this. I have one that 15 had $15 million already, 15 years old. I just got off the line last night with a girl that's now 18 years old. She's 17 years old, and she's a multimillionaire. So it doesn't matter what age. If the sooner you start, the greater. So the tools that are in there, we got people actually going out and using it and doing amazing things with it. And some of them have companies today, and some people they're famous models. I mean, so the principles there are solid, and I love sharing them because I've been consulting with people and helping people and teaching for 50 years, and I you get a lot of track record and feedback up to these, what's working and what's not.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm putting that in a simple format in this 7 secret treasures, because I really believe that we have treasures inside us that we're not harnessing.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think is the biggest mistake that people make, and that they're not getting to these points, and they're not getting to that wealth and that happiness?
Well, I don't ever see mistakes, really. We label things mistakes. I just see feedback. So the thing that's going on in people's life is a constant feedback to let them know that they're not being authentic. They're not prioritizing their life. They're worried about what other people think instead of having given themselves permission to be themselves. The most magnificent thing you'll ever do is be yourself. And so yourself is an expression of what you value most. So if you have a high value on children, let's say you're 35 years old, you have 3 children under the age of 5, and your highest value is children. If all of a sudden somebody came up to you and asked you, who are you? Your identity would be, I'm a mother. My life's revolving around my children. But if you met an entrepreneur and that was his highest values, even though he may have 3 kids with his wife, if you asked him, who are you? He would say, I'm an entrepreneur. His identity revolves around what he values most. And many people don't know what that is. They think they do, but they don't. On my website, drdemartini.com, I have a free value determination process. People can do it. It's private. I give it to people because it'll make a difference in their life if they take the time to do it. It takes 30 minutes of their time. But if they'll go and do that, it'll help them look at what is really their life is demonstrating that's important to them. Because most people don't know. They think they do. I have people say, well, I want to be financially independent. And then they're not doing any actions that'll ever lead them there. Or I want to find my soulmate, but they're not doing the actions, or they're doing just the opposite actions that will lead to that. So I don't go by what people say, I go by what they live. And what they live is telling me what they really value. So an individual that when they get money, they go buy consumables that depreciate value. If they tell me they want to be financially independent, I don't believe them. Because what they're doing is actually going and buying consumables that depreciate value. They put their money into something that goes down in value instead of buying something that goes up in value. And unless they buy something that goes up in value, they can't be financially independent. So I go and look at what people actually do, not what they fantasize and say, because it's usually just BS. I'm interested in helping people get grounded, be accountable, face the truth about their nature, get true about what's important to them, and start structuring their life accordingly. And that book will help them do exactly that. And I know it works because I've seen it work in thousands of people's lives.
Yeah, that's really powerful. It's very interesting. Values is actually it's the first module in my program as well, because I've gotten so much feedback from the people that I work with on that is actually one of the most powerful exercise they do in the whole program, which is a 10-week program. And people, when I ask them for feedback afterwards, they're always like, wow, it was such an eye-opening moment to do this exercise and to understand my values and to realize that sometimes I am not living my life by my values. And if someone would follow me around all day long, they wouldn't be able to identify my values because I'm not living my life by my values. And I feel like that shift, that mental shift of, oh, this is actually important to me and those other things shouldn't be as important to me, can really help gain perspective sometimes on things that a lot of people stress out about.
Well, anytime you hear yourself saying, I should, I ought to, I'm supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, or I need to, inside themselves, they're trying to live by somebody else's values in that moment
Mm-hmm.
because they're confused on what's really important versus what they think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those are completely backwards in people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see that, somebody says to me, a guy I consulted with just a couple of days ago, he said, I really ought to be doing this. I said, you ought to be doing this according to who?
Mm-hmm.
And he stopped and he goes, I don't know. I said, well, let's find out. Let's find
Mm-hmm.
out who you are injecting the values from, who you
Mm-hmm.
give an authority to,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a conflict between your own true values and these values you're injecting based on what somebody you envy and you think I should be doing that. And as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're trying to be second at being somebody else, that's like a cat trying to swim like a fish, not going to get somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. So super interesting. Cool. All right. So that's the 7 secret treasures. Who's your publisher?
G&D is the publishing company that's doing that. We signed a deal for 10 more books this year. So
Amazing.
I've got 3 of them. 2 of them are done, one's in the making, and then the rest of them will be done over the next so many months.
Okay. And you said the next book that's coming out is which one?
The next one is The Resilient Mind.
The Resilient Mind.
Just
Let's
sent that off. I just saw the look, the cover, everything is ready to go. It's going to print now. That'll be
amazing.
in a matter of weeks. And that I'm really inspired by because, yeah, it's how to deal with addiction and grief and loss and depression and all the very practical things that people are facing after COVID and how to have
Mm-hmm.
more resilience in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that'll be shortly out. And then right after that will be another one called Productivity Factor, the Productivity Factor. And that's how to be productive and engaged in your contribution to service to the world.
Mm-hmm. The resilient mind. I feel like, what we are hearing already from you and your life and how you're living your life, you live a very resilient life, right? Or at least it sounds like it. So I'm kind of curious, we all have difficult experiences in our lives. How do you deal with that? And do you feel like you've never really had, difficult situations in your life, or do you feel like you've actually mastered them when things like that happen to you?
Well, there's one great lesson that there's nothing that our mortal body can experience that our mortal soul can't love.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what we have in our life, we have control over our perceptions, decisions, and actions. So it's not what happens to us. It's not the label out there. It's our choice of how to ask questions to see what we're overlooking. For instance, if we see an event that we think is terrible, the only reason we see it terrible is because we have a subjective biased interpretation of what's happened, and we're assuming that there's more drawbacks and benefits, more negatives than positives about that event. It doesn't mean the event's negative more than positive. It just means that we're perceiving it that way. So if we ask the question, become conscious of what's unconscious, and find out the upsides and the benefits to it, it's not a terrible thing out there. It's not a difficult situation. It's just an event. So I start with the idea that all events are nothing but events. There are no good or bad events. They're just events. Now, the question is, if you've labeled it good or bad or terrific or terrible or, positive or negative, that's only because you've biased your interpretation and chosen to see those sides. And just because a group of people in the collective consciousness believes that's so doesn't mean it's so. Can I give an example?
Please, yeah.
So I had a gentleman who consulted with me a few months back. He was a wealthy corporate owner, and he was driving down a freeway. The freeway was quite jammed. 4 cars surrounded him. They stopped in front of him and on the sides, trapped him, came out with hoods on their head, machine guns, and surrounded his car, demanding to get out, knocked out the window, grabbed him out, put him in the trunk, and left his car on the freeway. And basically hijacked him, and to ransom him for a large sum of money, into many millions of dollars. So he was 5.5 weeks away from his company, his family, and everybody else until all the money was paid and transferred as a large sum of money. Then he was released in a very strange location, and finally made his way back and was put back with his family. His family was safe. They didn't get killed because of it. So they asked me to intervene because this was a post-traumatic stress label. So I asked him to, when he got on Zoom, we were on Zoom, and I said, go to the moment when all of a sudden you were taken, covered in a head covering, and put in a trunk. He said, because that's when he got in the trunk, he goes, this is real stuff here. This is I'm now trapped. I said, go to the moment, because the mind never has an event that you perceive negatively without, if you can fight it, you fight it. If you can't fight it, you flight it. If you can't flight it or fight it, you freeze. And a freeze is like a possum that plays dead, because you're perceiving that it's like a predator attacking you, and unless they're scavengers, they won't eat dead animals. Only scavengers eat dead animals. So freezing is a third alternative way of dealing with distresses. So he froze and dissociated and went into his mind. And I said, at the moment that you're in the trunk and you're smelling the fumes and you're feeling constrained and it's dark and your head is covered and your hands are tied, what at that moment, go to that moment. And in that moment, your mind will have the opposite automatically. It will create what is called an anti-memory in order to bring homeostasis to the brain. So I had him go to that moment, and he dissociated, and he went out, and he was running through a field holding his children and his wife's hands with birds and butterflies and perfuming, smelling roses, because there was gas fumes in the back of the car. And his mind created the opposite effect. So if it smelled terrible, it was now terrific. If he was constrained, he was free. If it was dark, it was light. The mind will create the anti-memory and the anti-time through a temporal entanglement automatically to compensate for the perception of negative without positive. It will create a positive without a negative to counterbalance it, in order to bring homeostasis to the electronics and neurotransmitters and the interoceptive perception you have. So I had him be aware of that. And we went through slivers of time, every few seconds, we would then snapshot what he's perceiving, find the opposite, snapshot, find the opposite, until they were balanced quantitatively and qualitatively, until he had a tear of gratitude for each of those moments. And we went through that complete traumatic experience. And even the time when they were hitting him and they were, threatening him and burning him, and he didn't get to eat and everything during those weeks. We took each one of those moments and balanced them out. When we got through, we then asked him a very simple question. What was the benefit of this whole thing? He could see the opposites, that neutralized some, but then what was the benefit of this happening, having the ransom and having the threatened family and everything else? And he says, all I could do is think about my children and my wife. Now, when I was in business, they were low on my values. I was focused on business. I was focused on economics, and I was gaining weight. I was eating poorly. I had hypertension, had high blood pressure. I was neglecting my kids and family. I wasn't around them. They were not priority to me. Business is everything. My wife was bitching about it. She said, you don't even know your kids. Yes, 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 yes. He was big shot, cocky. While he was in that mode, all he could think about was the priority of his family. The second he got left out and then got back to the family, he just held his family. So he reestablished a relationship with his family that he dreamed of. And that was one of the benefits that brought tears to his eyes. Then he said, I lost a pile of weight because I didn't get to eat hardly. And I'm now back to normal weight. And now that I'm back home, I'm now exercising, and my wife is feeding me differently, and I'm now eating differently. My life and health is restored. My family is restored. And during that time, all the people I was trying to push to take on responsibility at work, and I was angry at them and I was autocratic too and everything else, when I was gone, they rose to the occasion, took over the role, and the business flourished during the time I was not there. And it made more money than the ransom.
Wow.
And he said, when I found that out, that I am now able to be with my family, keep healthy, go on a vacation with them, be present with them, be at the kids' functions, and have my business make more money than I was beforehand. And I don't have a heart problem now. And I calmed that down. And I've got to a higher priority. I can see now, after he got through, when I finished with him, he said, I'm now grateful and I almost want to thank these people for ransoming me because they saved my life. He says, I feel like I couldn't have paid a consultant to get that kind of result. So it was labeled a post-traumatic situation. The therapist said it was post-traumatic. The psychiatrist gave medication it's supposed to. The news made it a post-traumatic, terrible event all over the news. When we got through in 2 hours, he was grateful, had tears of gratitude, was not stressed by it because he asked the right questions that he was unconscious of because he chose to label it now by seeing both sides as a magnificent event that was congruent with who he really was, helping him become authentic. That's all we really experience in life. The rest of it is our mislabeling. And it's us being biased with our amygdala, trying to see things one-sided. See, our addiction to the pleasures in life bring our pains. Our addiction to the positives bring our negatives. It's like a magnet. If you're ever trying to look for a one-sided magnet, the other one will smack you. If you can embrace both sides of the magnet, you're not distracted and disturbed by the one side that you keep trying to avoid. In Buddhism, they said the desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is the source of human suffering. And many people suffer because they keep trying to divide life into get only one side instead of embrace both sides. So he realized that what happened was not a mistake. It was a higher order inside his apparent chaos. And I just asked him questions that he was not asking himself to see the blessings in that. And I also have people, I had a lady recently that found this man, she's married, but she found this man that was just everything she always wanted. And she's all enamored with it. But she's got a family at home, and she's got a husband at home, and she's wanting to have an affair with this guy. And she was seeing only the positives, not seeing the downside. And I just asked her a simple question. I want you now to see your kids all sitting there on some chairs watching you have the affair with a guy. They're watching as you're about to make love with him and you're about to go out with him. And then your husband comes in and they're all watching as a family. And she goes, that tortures me. I said, I want you to be aware because if you go and get a credit card and you go buy shopping, you get retail therapy and you get the pleasures. And then 30 days later, you get a bill with high interest rates and that's the pain side. And they're separated. And when you're shopping, you're not looking at the downside. And then when you're paying the bills, you forgot about the upside by that. And you separated the inseparables and divided the indivisibles and labeled the unlabellables and polarized the unpolarizables. And as a result of it, you're in the amygdala trying to avoid one and seek the other. And you're basically in a manic depressive state. So what I did is I showed her the downsides that's there that she's overlooking with her subjective bias, just like I showed the upsides on the thing that the gentleman was overlooking on his. So I showed him the upsides. I showed her the downside. I calmed it down. And then I asked, what are the downsides of the new guy? Because if you all of a sudden left your husband and then you went with a new guy, you would eventually discover that he's got things you don't like too, because you never get a guy with one side. There is no such thing. So I helped her see the downsides of her infatuation, because she was unconscious of it, and showed her the other side and brought both of these individuals back into balance. And when she got through, she realized, she had tears in her eyes, and she realized, she said, this isn't worth it. And I said, it's wiser. And now let's look at the upsides of your husband. Well, he's working very hard, and I've been upset about it because he's working very hard, but I have a beautiful home. I got beautiful education for kids. I got beautiful clothes for the kids. I got this and this. and the guy you're going after doesn't have the wherewithal to be able to support your standards. So if you dumped your husband, you'd be going downhill, and then you'd be alienating your kids. I said, so ground yourself a bit here. So I basically showed her the downsides here, and I showed him the upsides here, and I brought both of them into balance and brought them to tears of gratitude. And then, of course, when she got there, she realized she was going to write a letter to this gentleman and said, I appreciate him coming into my life. He taught me how to appreciate my own family and who I'm with. Thank you. And they get back with her family.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful story. Yeah, and I think that's oftentimes really the gist of everything we do in our lives, right? I think that shift in perspective and asking yourself, why am I experiencing this right now? Right? What is it teaching me? What is, yeah, I think this is super powerful. I really love that.
Well, the thing
Because
is,
sometimes,
can I
yeah,
say something?
yeah,
If you just ask, what is it teaching me? It's vague. If you identify a negative and find out a counterbalancing positive, or a positive and found a negative, once you get the mean between those, you'll extract the meaning. The meaning will come to you. But if you just ask the meaning, you'll get nebulous responses. You'll speculate. You don't want to speculate. You want to find the actual other side of the equation to actually get to the meaning of what's happening in your life. Extracting meaning out of your existence is knowing how to ask questions that bring the mean to perceptions, as Aristotle said in his time.
Amazing. Okay, so, and is that kind of your approach when you talk about the resilient mind then?
Well, the resilient mind has, when you're dealing with grief, there's only two forms of grief: the perception of loss of something you seek and hold on to and you're attached to, or the perception of gain of something you're trying to avoid. And there's only two forms of relief: the perception of gain of that which you're seeking, or the perception of loss of something you're trying to avoid. So I basically show people how to identify what these are inside and ask inventorying questions to bring it to the mean and dissolve the grief. I developed a method starting in 1976. I clinically started applying it in 1984. I've taken 4,000 people who've had deaths in their family, 4,000 through the grief process in 3 hours or less, and dissolved grief. And people don't believe that's possible. They did a study at Yale University on this method. They tried it with two other methods. They didn't get a result. We had 100% results, and they followed them for 18 months, no grief. So I'm certain, I am absolutely certain, and money back guarantee with people about that tool. I've been doing that I've done it under the Christchurch earthquake. I did it in the tsunami in Ishinomaki, Japan. I did it also another prefecture in Japan's earthquake. We did it in China. So this is a very powerful tool that's in there, the chapters on that. But there's also how to deal with depression, and how to deal with anxiety, and how to deal with perceptions of loss, and of beating yourself up because you're not doing what you say. A lot of the things that people are frustrated by, there's practical tools on what to do that you'll get a result if you just do it right there on the spot. And so it's a practical book that can help people navigate through the challenges that they're facing.
Amazing. What do you think are the main reasons for depression and anxiety? Is that kind of the same thing of just kind of how people perceive their lives?
Well, depression is a comparison of your current reality to some unrealistic expectation or fantasy you're holding on to. If you take somebody who's depressed and say, okay, you're depressed. Yeah, I'm clinically depressed. My doctor said I had a biochemical balance. Well, 5 weeks ago, they just ruled that out and found out that was a false 1990 study that was now been deleted because it's been misused by the pharmaceutical and the psychiatric industry. So people just been doing that because it's great and convenient for the pharmaceutical companies to say you have a biochemical balance and you got to do it. But the question is why? Why do you have a biochemical imbalance? If all of a sudden a tiger jumped into your room all of a sudden and salivation was about to eat you, and I did a blood test on your neurochemistry, I guarantee you that osteocalcin and cortisol and norepinephrine and epinephrine and testosterone would be up, and dopamine and serotonin and estrogen would all be down. And you got a biochemical balance because I got a tiger about to eat me. But what people don't realize is that they've got stored in their subconscious mind experiences that are lopsided: pleasure without pain, pain without pleasure. And these create fantasies and nightmares. And anything that reminds us of that can be anxious, cause anxiety. We also have fantasies, which are the anti-anxiety systems, where we have fantasies that we get hooked by. Many women end up dating the same kind of guy over and over again because he says the same thing or looks the same way, and they don't even realize that they're being hooked by associations that have been compounded through time, and they get hooked into the same pattern. And the same thing for anxiety on the negative side. But that's because of an experience that was lopsided in perception that has been compounded over time by other things that remind us of that same original event. So I address how to dissolve anxiety, very simple process, and also how to dissolve the depression. And there's 15 primary reasons why people are depressed. They have an unrealistic expectation on other people to be one-sided. The purpose the woman I'm with, she's supposed to be nice, never mean, kind, never cruel, positive, never negative, peaceful, never wrathful, generous, never stingy. Not going to happen. A woman you're with is going to have times when you communicate with her inner values, she's going to be nice. If you go against her values, she's going to be mean. She's a human being. She's got a set of values. There's no one-sided individual. But if you expect somebody to be one-sided, you're setting yourself up for depression. If you expect somebody to be living in your values, not their own values, you're going to be setting yourself up for depression because they can't do that. Nobody can live in somebody else's values long term. And then you have to expect yourself to be one-sided or expect yourself to live in somebody else's values. So there's 15 most common things that I've taken all the clinical cases of depression and dissolved it, even though they supposedly had biochemical imbalances. And then all of a sudden they realize, I don't need the friggin' medication. I'm not telling people to come off it. I go and tell them, go talk to your doc. That's between you and your psychiatrist. But they come off it because they realize that now I know why I was depressed. And most people don't address that. They just say it's a biochemical thing, which means you've been robbed of your own accountability, of your own perception, and you've taken away your power. And we have false attribution bias. We blame some biochemical imbalance that we have no control over, and then we give credit to some sort of drug that's hopefully going to do this job, which placebo is not much better than placebo in some cases. And it has side effects. So I'm trying to re-empower people and give them their power back and show them how to use this. They always can have a last resort with medications. And there's a place for some people that may have genetic or brain damage or injuries and things. But 99% of the population, they don't need that. And I feel firm about that because I've got thousands of people who come to my programs where we've taken them and gone through these methods and cleared it all out, and they go, they just stop it. They go to their doctor and said, I'm not depressed, so I'd like to wean off, thank you. Or they just don't even go back to their doctor because sometimes they're done. Now, some people do have biochemical imbalance because of a reason, but that's not 90% of the people have just unrealistic expectations and delusions. And we're bombarded by it. Our grandmother gets up and says, now be nice, don't be mean, be kind, don't be cruel, be positive, don't be negative, be generous, don't be stingy, be peaceful, don't be wrathful. And then right after she says that, she goes, beats the hell out of grandpa and gives him hell and bitches at grandpa and does the opposite. So it's a moral hypocrisy. And then we get inculcated by these ideas and they get trapped by them. And then we expect these fantasies. Majority of people have unbelievable amount of fantasies that they're running their life by. And that's a sign of being in the amygdala. The amygdala is always looking for a one-sided world. The executive center is embracing objectively reality. But most people don't want to do that. They want to hold on to their fantasies, and then they're depressed about their life.
Yeah, I could listen to you forever. And I'm sure our listeners could as well. It's really interesting, all of the insights that you're sharing with us today. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Super excited to check out these different books. So the 7 Secret Treasures, the Resilient Mind, and Proactivity Factor, those 2 are coming soon, and the other one is out now. And how can people, I think you already mentioned it, but I do want to mention it again, how can people best find your work?
Well, the easiest way to find me is simply go to drdemartini.com. And on there, there's a value determination process that's free and private. And I guarantee you that's worth your time, that what you'll have as an insight will be worth it. And I've been working on that 45 years and polishing that little system up. And they can just go on the website and I've got podcast shows and media and radio, television, newspapers, magazines by the thousands there. So you could spend, you're going to have to believe in reincarnation just to be able to watch my website, because it's going to take more than one life to get through it.
Mhm. And when is your next live event, if people are interested in joining that?
I'm doing a live event. I believe it's on the third evening in Houston, and then on the weekend of the 12th and 13th, I'm doing a live event in Houston. I did one in Munich, Germany, just the other day.
Nice.
I'm here doing some filming. We're filming 2 more movies here while we're here. And then I'm off to Turkey, and then Cyprus and Israel. And like I said, those places there. I'm doing a
Nice.
program live, 2 programs, one to the leaders of Israel, and then one to the port authorities. I'm doing a program to the port in Ashdod, Israel.
Okay.
So there's live ones coming in, but I'm also doing podcasts and live seminars every week. I mean, multiple times a week. I've done 281 presentations, programs this year already online.
Wow.
So we'll do over 300. We do an average between 300 and 350 a year. One year 426, but usually 300, 350.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I don't know if you know that, but how many books have you published in total?
Well, a lot of them are done by myself, and they're for advanced student systems. They're textbooks. There's 43 out that are paperbacks. There'll be another 7 out very shortly. Then there's another one I've written that hasn't come out yet, that's on grief, that I've just postponed it. We got rejected by 6 publishers because they didn't want to believe it's possible. And I said, I don't care if you believe it's possible. I'll publish it myself. I know it's possible. I know it is. They didn't believe it because it's fact, and they don't want to do it. They're holding on to the idea you're supposed to grieve. Prolonged grief causes cardiovascular, digestive systems, autoimmune systems. It is absolutely a farce what's been taught about grief. And there's absolutely no reason we have to grieve. And people don't believe that's possible until I demonstrate it. I've done it on television. I've done it on radio. I've done it under scrutiny under the universities, and I've won every time. So this is a very powerful tool. So that there's a book on that coming. And but textbooks and manuals go up to almost 300, about 300, because I've written a whole lot of books that are 1,000-page textbooks, a whole lot.
And are they all in English, or have you also published in other languages?
Well, the ones that are the paperbacks that I go out, I've got it in 40 languages now.
Amazing.
But not all of them in 40 languages, but amongst those books, there's 40 languages.
There's
Some have 12 languages, 6, 20 is different. But the other ones we have translators that when I do live presentations, because the other ones are textbooks. Like I'm about to do one I've got one on physics and optics. It's about to be done in November. I finish it next week. This day next week, I'll be finished. It goes to print. And then I'll be doing a live presentation to 100 of my most advanced students on that text for 5 days. We're going to go through the entire text. And then they'll get that with the program. And I do a lot of those. I do at least 1 or 2 of those a year, those programs. So I write that's equivalent of about 5 books every year, just in that one text.
Yeah, wow. 1,100 pages. That's very, very remarkable. Well, I'm super glad and grateful that we had you here. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. John Demartini.
Thank you.
And yeah, I wish you all the best. Good luck. Have safe travels. Enjoy your time with your kids. And yeah, I hope, maybe next year we'll talk again, and we'll talk about the next few books that you're publishing.
I look forward to it. Fantastic. And thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for helping me fulfill my mission, because you're helping me reach people that I wouldn't reach otherwise. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. And for those of you that are listening right now and found this information super helpful, make sure that you are sharing this podcast episode as well with your loved ones, with your family members, with your friends, with your colleagues, because that's how we can really raise this knowledge, and how we can really raise awareness about all of these really important topics. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much again, John, for being here, and I hear you hopefully very soon.